Hi there guys, my name is Jacob and welcome back to the channel. Now a few weeks ago I posted a video of a tour of my new kitchen, dining room and utility room, and the reason I did that is because we've recently had them renovated. And in that video I said if anybody would like to know the costs of what it took to get all this done, to let me know in the comments. And a lot of you did let me know, and you said you wanted to know how much it all cost me. So that is exactly what I'm going to tell you in this video. But I would just like to say it will probably make a lot more sense if you go back and watch a couple of different videos before this one. About a year ago, I posted a house tour, which was when I bought the house. That video will show you what it looked like before the renovation works. And then you can watch the kitchen tour video, which I did a couple of weeks ago, which again, that shows you after the work has been done. And then of course, come back and watch this video if you haven't seen those two already. And this will give you a breakdown of the cost of the work. That way it'll just make a little bit more sense. So you'll actually know what I'm talking about. But if you've seen those two videos already and you want to get started straight away, then carry on with this video. So here we go with the costs. Now, when we first started this project, we knew that we were going to be taking out structural walls. Where I'm sat now, there used to be a structural wall here. There also used to be one just behind the camera to the left-hand side. And there's also used to be a chimney breast behind me, a huge double chimney breast. All of those things were structural. So we knew straight away we're going to need an architect involved and we're going to need a structural engineer involved. So those were the first two things that I put on my list to do when we started this project. Now, the architect provided a general design of what we wanted. Obviously, we had a meeting with them, spoke about kind of what we were trying to achieve. And that was taking walls out, the chimney out, windows out, things like that. And they gave us a full set of building drawings. And also helped us in many different avenues along the way, such as dealing with building control and things like that. But that came at a cost of £1,500, so £1,500 for the architect. And as I say, that gave us drawings, that gave us support with the council and building control. It also gave us somebody to liaise with when it came to the structural engineer, things like that. But yeah, so that was our first big cost, £1,500 for the architect. The structural engineer that kind of came with that was an additional £450. And the structural engineer is quite similar to the architect's job, except they just give you the calculations and a different set of drawings for kind of load-bearing walls, things like that. So, for instance, taking out these structural walls meant that we needed to have steels put in place, so big steel beams. So the structural engineer designed those steel beams and where they would sit and what needed to be put on what, and provided the calculations and the drawings that, of course, are needed for building control to make sure the building is safe and it's not going to start crumbling down when we start taking structural walls out. So again, that was £450 for the structural engineer. Next came building control. Now that is basically part of the council, and they are the ones ultimately that have to make sure your building is safe when you start doing building works and renovation works. Now, I don't believe you always have to get building control in as part of your project. It does depend on what kind of works you're actually doing. But because ours was structural, you have to get building control in because they have to sign it off, make sure it's safe. If you don't get your project signed off by building control, when you come to sell your house, you may end up with a problem. You'll probably find that people won't want to buy your house if you don't have a sign-off certificate to say that the works you've had done are safe and were done correctly. So, you know, it's £250, but if you ask me, well worth it because, you know, you don't want problems down the line when you come to sell, things like that. Next came sourcing a builder. Now, I don't know about you, but I have never done building work before. I've never done renovation works before. So when it came to sourcing a builder, I did not know where to start. But I spoke to friends, I spoke to family, and eventually I came across a guy who came pretty well recommended. He'd actually worked on a couple of people's jobs that, you know, people I knew and friends of friends. And he came very well recommended. Of course, I messaged other builders and got quotes off other builders as well. But ultimately, I went with this recommendation, and I'm very glad I did. His name was Spencer, and he did a wonderful job. From start to finish, he provided me a solid quote that was very competitive with the rest of the quotes I got. And he really didn't deviate from that quote at all. Other than a few additional things that I asked him to do along the way, the quote was pretty accurate to what it ended up costing me. So I can't really fault him for that. And the only additional cost, of course, was stuff I asked him to do. Like once you start taking walls down and things like that, additional things you realise you need done that you didn't know you needed doing. And I just asked him to, fix a few things kind of as and when he was going, which, just added a few extra costs on, but nothing major. But ultimately, the builder himself, that cost came to £11,000 in total. And as I say, that cost was for taking down the walls, taking out the chimney breast, putting in a new foundation for where the steel posts were going to sit for both the walls, because a steel beam comes across here, it also comes across here, meets at a central location. So a foundation had to be dug out and concrete set and all that type of stuff to create a pad for one of the steel beams to sit on. He also fitted the bifold doors that we've got just to my right. He also fitted a new window upstairs, did some brickwork around the house. So all manner of different things. And that came to, as I said, £11,000. In addition to the builder, you also need things like electricians, plumbers, things like that. And they all came at an additional cost. They were not included in the builder's cost. So we've got electrician down as £1,450. Now that was a lot more than I was originally budgeting for an electrician. But ultimately we had to have some additional rewiring done, which I didn't account for. And we also had to have a new fuse box put in, which again was something I didn't know we needed. But this house is a 1950s house. And yeah, a lot of things are old, that's 70 plus years old. Things need changing along the way. And if you're not clued up about these things, which, a lot of people aren't, you kind of find these things as you go through a project. And, additional money does need to be grabbed from different places to pay for things. So, the electrician cost a little bit more than I wanted to pay, but ultimately it needed doing. So £1,450 for the electrician. We also needed plumbing doing because there's a radiator just behind me. There was a couple of other radiators that needed taking out. That one was brand new, so that needed plumbing in. But the plumbing was very reasonable. I only got charged £275 for all the plumbing work. So I was very happy with that cost. I thought it was going to be a lot more. But yeah, just £275. Next came plastering. We had a lot of plastering done in here because a lot of the ceilings came out, a lot of the walls came out, different things like that. But again, the plasterers were very reasonable. We paid just £400 for this entire space to be plastered, plus the utility room, which again, I thought was incredibly reasonable. And next cost were to have the bifold doors and windows. Now, not to fit them because the builder fitted them, but just to supply them. So as I said, we've got a set of steel bifold doors to my right, and a new bathroom window we had put in. And they cost me £2,700 just to supply them, and then the builder fit them. Now, I thought this was quite reasonable, £2,700. I think it was £2,500 just for the bifolds. Some people have told me that's quite expensive. Some people have told me I got a good deal on them. So I guess it depends who you speak to, but we had a number of different quotes for the bifold doors. Some of them were outrageous. The highest quote we ended up getting was about £8,000 for, I think it's about a 3 metre gap for the bifold doors. So it's kind of 3 metres by 2 metres, something like that. £8,000. But like I say, in the end, we ended up only paying £2,500. So it just shows you do have to look around and get different quotes from different providers, because some of them will absolutely try and take advantage of you. And, if you just take their word for it and think that is how much something costs, you may end up paying way over the odds. So it's really important as part of building work and renovation work that every little thing you do in the job, you make sure you get at least 2 quotes. Normally more than that, but a minimum of 2. So you can just compare the quotes and make sure you're not getting fleeced by one of them. Now, all of those costs are the building renovation costs. That doesn't include the new kitchen. I'll go through that in a minute. But the total of all the building costs came to a grand total of £17,625. That's for everything I've just said. Now, that money all came from savings that we put aside, knowing that when we bought this house, we were going to do this work. We didn't know how much we were going to need, but we saved a pot of about £20,000, and we had that in cash in a savings account ready to do this work, because we knew when we bought this house, we were not going to be happy with the way it was when we bought it. We loved the plot, we loved the shell of the house, we loved the location, but inside we knew we wanted to freshen it up and open it up a bit, take some walls out, put a new kitchen in, things like that. So we saved and we planned ahead. So as I say, that £17,625 was all paid for in cash, no loans or anything like that, because I'm kind of really against taking loans out. My mindset is kind of always, if you can't pay in cash, then you probably can't afford it. That's normally kind of what I apply to, can you afford something? Right, then moving on, of course, once we took the walls down and we'd ripped the kitchen out, we'd ripped the utility out, of course we needed to replace those things. So we went into the market looking for a new kitchen, new utility, that type of thing, and new flooring. And we ended up going around a lot of different providers, but we ended up settling on Wren Kitchens. We had a lot of good feedback from other people we know who'd used them. We felt very confident in what they provided and the service they provided. So ultimately, we went with Wren. We thought they were quite competitive, maybe slightly more expensive than some of the other places we went to, but all in all, fairly competitive for what they provided. Now, we didn't pay Wren to fit the kitchen, we only paid Wren to supply the kitchen and the utility. So to supply everything of what we had, the kitchen cost £9,500. The utility cost £4,400, and that was all paid for through a 0% loan that Wren gave us. So they basically supplied the kitchen for free, and we took the balance out on a 0% loan, and I believe we're paying that off over 5 years. So essentially, that was a fantastic deal, kind of nothing up front. And we get the kitchen and the utility all supplied, ready to be fitted. And we just pay that balance off over 5 years. I was very happy with that. Now, when it came to fitting the kitchen, of course, you need somebody to fit it. And we didn't want to pay Wren to do it because they wanted about £5,000 to fit the kitchen and the utility cupboards, which I thought was just extortionate. But I think, to be honest, that is where they make a lot of their money, in the fitting. But we already knew somebody who'd done a bit of work for us before, who, he kind of dabbles in carpentry and kitchen fitting, things like that. So we always knew we were going to go to him for a quote. Now, in the end, we ended up paying £3,000 for the kitchen and the utility to be fitted. But it wasn't just that. We ended up having flooring throughout the entirety of the downstairs, done by the same guy. So within that £3,000, you've got flooring all the way through the downstairs, all the kitchen fitted, all the utility fitted, and a number of different doors have kind of been fitted better. One was replaced. So there was a few additional things in there. But as I say, for £3,000 compared to Wren's £5,000, that's a massive saving. Still, I'll be honest, more than I wanted to pay, but it is what it is. I wasn't going to fit it myself because I did not feel confident in doing that. I'm pretty DIY, pretty hands-on when it comes to a lot of things, but fitting a kitchen is not something I've done before, and I didn't want to mess it up, basically. So I was happy to pay somebody to do that. So again, the kitchen fitter was paid for in cash, but the kitchen and the utility itself was taken out on a 0% finance loan. Now again, those costs total £16,900 for kitchen utility and fitted. So if we total all the building costs plus the kitchen costs, that comes to a grand total of £34,525. So that is a lot of money, let's be honest. But as I said before, we didn't pay all of that in cash. You know, a good, say, 20,000 of that was paid for out of our own money, out of cash. The rest of it, say 14,000, was put on a 0% loan. Now, we've spoken to a few people about kind of how much we've spent on this project. And some people kind of said it was pretty reasonable and kind of what they expected. Some people said we've paid, you know, way too much. Some were surprised how little we paid. So I guess it depends on kind of what your own experiences are as to kind of where you think we fall in that. Personally, I thought it was quite reasonable for what we've had done. But I guess, you know, that's just opinion. Costs, you know, things are expensive to get things done. There's just no doubt about it. Building work these days is expensive. But I went into it knowing that. So none of the prices and the cost of things really shocked me, apart from the electrician. But that was because we needed more work doing than I thought we did. But a couple of things people have said to us, which I guess is true, is if we put this house back on the market now, you know, would we get our money back that we've put into the house? And I think the answer is no. I think we bought this house for 365,000. We've spent pretty much an additional 35,000. So we're all in now for kind of 400,000 on this house. So if we put this house back on the market now, would we achieve that? I mean, potentially. I have looked at other houses that, you know, there aren't any on the market at the minute in my area that are kind of similar in a fully renovated state. There are a lot of houses similar, but in a very rundown state. So it's really difficult to tell whether we would be able to achieve it. But ultimately, and this is what I've said to the people that kind of brought this question up with me, our goal was not to buy this house, do it up and flip it and sell it on. So whether we could achieve, you know, the 400,000 plus that we'd need to get that money back, to me at the minute is irrelevant. That was never part of the plan. The plan for us was to buy this house as a long-term family home. You know, it's only me, my wife and the cat at the minute, but our plan is to have children in the future. So this house was ideally located to family, to good schools, things like that are going to be hopefully part of our future. So even though maybe we couldn't resell this house now for the amount of money we've put into it, that's not really a concern for me at the minute, because I feel we're going to be in this house for 10, 20 years, maybe longer. You know, and by then, who knows where the housing market will be. You know, that's such a long way away. You know, anything can happen by then. I expect houses will probably continue to go up in value. You know, that may prove to be wrong, but that seems to be what has been happening over the last few decades. So I would assume that will continue. So in 10, 20 years time, if we were looking to sell them, I'm sure we'll get our money back, you know, over that period of time. But in the near term, you know, I wouldn't be looking to put this house back on the market, because I probably wouldn't be that confident of getting all that money back, because that would be a lot of money to get back in such a short period of time. But I guess you could also say we've also transformed the house and made it worth a lot more. You know, it would be a lot more desirable, I would imagine, for people coming in looking at a house like this now, compared to what else is on the market. You know, there might be someone out there who's willing to pay, you know, 400 plus for it, which if that was the case, we would get our money back. So it's one of them. But like I say, at the minute, not a concern for us at all. We spent the money because we want to enjoy living in this house, and we wanted it how we wanted it ultimately. And that is exactly what we've done. So there you have it, guys. That is the full costs of the kitchen renovation. I'm just looking down, £34,525. That is the total kitchen, utility, dining room renovation costs. Guys, let me know down in the comments what you think of all that. I know this was an incredibly long video. I had a feeling it would be when I started it, to be quite honest. But, you know, people asked for it, so I have delivered. Now, I know people have said in the past as well, I need to put graphics on the screen and things like that when I'm going through costs. But to be quite honest, my editing skills are nowhere near where they need to be when it comes to that type of thing. So I can only apologise. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know down in the comments. Maybe hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed to my channel so far. And guys, thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.